right. Aaron, welcome to Living Off Rentals.
Thanks for inviting me, Carmen. This is awesome. I am a big fan. I'm in the Facebook group. I actually been following the podcast for a long time, so it's pretty cool getting to be a guest.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. I noticed when I was looking at the calendar invite before this that you mentioned that if you're going to be on a West Pointers podcast, you were hoping to be on Preston Pish's podcast, but this second-rate podcast is going to have to do, and you got to get in line because I'm still waiting for an invite on Preston's podcast as well. So, yeah,
I was very fun. You mentioned it a few shows back. I'm like, oh, I like that show too. You guys went to West Point together. You know that guy?
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. He's got the real podcast. This one, we'll make do with it today. But you're someone that I am inspired by, not just because of the extreme adversity that you've gone through, but because of the person that you choose to be every day in the face of what most people would consider pretty significant hurdles. I think most people can kind of get into these periods of their life where they get down about their challenges. And then, you see someone like you with real adversity that impacts pretty much every aspect of your life, being blind and deaf. But even with these disabilities, you've managed to start a successful chocolate company. You've run ultra marathons. You're raising 3 young kids. You're an active real estate investor. So I think for people tuning into this, if you're listening and you're looking for some extra motivation, I think you'll be really inspired today. So I'm going to let you share your story here. And I was wondering if you could just kind of go back to the beginning and kind of share the story leading up to when you sustained your injuries.
Sure. However, I got to tell you though, I don't have a monopoly on pain or suffering or anything like that. And I don't say that to be faux humble or anything. It's to keep me centered, because I don't want to use it as an excuse for not doing my best. People will say you could just sit back and say I've had enough, right? But for me, it's not having that excuse, not sitting back and wasting the rest of my life. I still have plenty of life to live, and I'm gonna attack it every day. But
That's awesome.
but that being said, I joined the Navy in late 1999 as a cook in the Navy, a chef. I got stationed down in Italy, got to cook for a 3-star admiral in Gaeta, Italy. On duty, we sailed around the Mediterranean, pulled into ports, ran up the flag, and threw a reception, and then went right back to Italy, our home port. And off duty, I got to do those MWR trips all over Europe. I got to tell you, it was not a hardship duty. No, but of course, this was 99. Then a couple of years later, September 11th happened, and all of a sudden I found myself on this, basically the Admiral's party boat. That's definitely not what it really was. I mean, it was the headquarters of the entire naval forces of the Mediterranean, but we were floating out at sea, and I was literally watching 2 wars happening on television. We were doing our part, and of course I was myself too. I was cooking for the Admiral, his top brass. It was pretty hard work, because we worked around the clock out at sea. But I just felt like I needed to do something a little bit better with my talents and my skills. So I volunteered to deploy to Afghanistan. And this was my first deployment still as a Navy cook in 2006. And I ran an Army chow hall down on a PRT and a provincial reconstruction team, basically civil affairs team out in the desert of Afghanistan. And instead of cooking for the Admiral and 35 of his senior leadership, I was cooking for like 600 and 700 ISAF troops, and it was great. I was there, but that's when I met some EOD technicians, explosive ordnance disposal, the military's bomb squad, and there was just something about what they did. Right, they were first responders on the battlefield. When everybody's running away from the danger, those guys that make that long, lonely walk towards the danger, the roadside bombs, the car bombs, suicide vests, all those buried unknown dangers, the unexploded ordnance, all that kind of stuff that drops from the sky or gets buried and never goes off. And over time, it just gets angrier. And that's what they do. There's a tight-knit community within the military, and they're lifesavers. And all of it, the technical aspect, the pace, everything about it told me that's what I needed to do. So I put in my request to strike over, to switch jobs from Navy cook to Navy bomb technician, and they said no. I guess they like my cooking too much. But anyways, I mean, there's a whole lot of, a few different reasons for that. Manpower, and just the fact that they don't really take cooks into the bomb school.
It's not a seamless transition in training.
Yeah, it's too much of a course correction for the Navy.
Yeah.
But when I came home from Afghanistan that first time, my time, my retirement, or my contract was coming up. So I could either re-enlist as a cook, or I could let my contract expire. And that's what I did. And I went over to the Army recruiter, and I told him exactly what I wanted to do. And I got to keep my rank. I just switched uniforms and titles. I went from petty officer to sergeant, and started training up as an EOD technician. About a year and change after raising my hand again and swearing another oath, I was a soldier, and I was up at Fort Drum in upstate New York, and preparing to deploy again. I went to Iraq, and then once more to Afghanistan, and this time in 2011, that's when I got injured. I was 8 months into a 12-month rotation, and I was a team leader this time. So I was the one actually getting into the bomb suit and making that long walk towards untold danger. But on this particular incident, I wasn't in the bomb suit. I used the robot to separate the components. Everything was more or less safe. And then as I was approaching to take evidence and dispose of the rest, there was a secondary device. And that took my eyes and cracked my skull, and a few other injuries, but sent me back to the States a little bit early. And I was sitting there, Walter Reed, in total darkness, trying to figure out what was next. And the doctors did everything they could to save my eyes, but it wasn't going to happen. So I was sitting there, Walter Reed, in my bed, trying to, starting to feel sorry for myself, angry at the Taliban and the Afghans and the president and the military. I was angry at everybody, but mostly myself. Why did this happen to me? But I was asking the wrong questions. Instead of asking why this happened to me, I should be saying, why did this happen for me? And it was my military training and my family, and it was those service members, those warriors up and down those halls at Walter Reed that really were the ones that turned my negativity around and got me focused on moving forward. I wasn't going to let any of them down. And that's what I do even today, is I just focus on who I can serve. And I got to work. If I was going to be a blind person, I was going to be the best darn blind person I could be. and so I did. I learned how to be. I left the hospital there. I still had surgeries and whatnot, but they really couldn't. Walter Reed's really good at, like amputations and prosthetics, and I'd lost
Mhm.
my eyes, but I was more or less intact. So they released me pretty quickly, and I went to the Augusta VA hospital where they have a blind rehabilitation center. I learned how to be blind, the cane, the accessibility devices like my talking phone and computer and all that. And soon I was back at work. In fact, they asked me where I wanted to go to retire, and I said I don't want to. I want to stay active duty, and I know I couldn't do the job any longer, but I could instruct. So they sent me down to the EOD school at Eglin Air Force Base, and I started teaching. And a nonprofit organization actually built us a home here, and that's how I grew roots.
Wow.
And from there, I began speaking, telling my story. I started running, mountain climbing, whitewater kayaking, pretty much anything to stay off the couch and get sucked into that, that pit of. There's always those demons I talk about, like the ones that, say, why me, what if.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to get stuck on the couch feeling sorry for myself, and maybe I overdid a little bit as I started running marathons and the mountains and all that. um, about 4 years after the incident, I was sent right back to the hospital. Um, I contracted bacterial meningitis through the cracks in my skull,
Mm.
and the meningitis nearly killed me. But while I was in the hospital the second time, um, the either the heavy doses of antibiotics or the bacteria itself stole what was left of my hearing that the bomb blast hadn't taken. So in 2015, now I was right back there in a hospital bed in total darkness and in total silence, trying to figure out what I was gonna like. What
Yeah.
now? Like, when? No, that was what I was thinking. Was, when does one guy uh paid his dues? When does this
Yeah.
soldier
No
had his
kidding.
fair share? Yeah. So I also lost some of my inner ear sense of balance, that vestibular balance.
Mm.
So I was like trapped in my body. I couldn't get
Wow.
on my treadmill. I couldn't go out for a run with my running partners. I was sitting there at my uh like the breakfast bar in my kitchen. I couldn't even communicate. All of that
Yeah.
accessibility stuff was all almost all audio based.
Right.
You did, I was thinking at that time maybe I should have learned Braille at at the
Yeah.
blind school, but it's like a dying art, with all
Mm.
the technology nowadays. But man, it could have come in handy then.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
anyways, anyways, that's uh, how I became blind and deaf, and and again, I was sitting there trapped in my body. My entire world ended at my fingertips. You ever played, like, back in the day, Legend of Zelda, where the whole screen is black until you enter a square, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like that. You have no idea what's out there. And um,
Wow.
my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, uh, she started writing every single letter of every single word that somebody needed, she or anybody else needed to say, in the palm of my hand, in, military block letters so I could understand it.
Yeah.
And that's how I got message traffic in.
Mm. Wow.
When the pandemic happened and everybody was quarantining and isolated and feeling lonely, I was sitting there going, man, not my first rodeo.
Yeah.
But it was a tough time. It was another one of those times where I was thinking, man, like, why is this happening to me again? But of course, wrong question. Why was this happening for me? Is the question I I learned I needed to be asking.
Mm.
And part of it is to become a better me. I needed the adversity. I needed the struggle to realize that I can do so much more with my life. And the first thing was just to get off of that chair, get away from that breakfast bar, feeling sorry for myself. I got on my treadmill and I just hit, the quick start. It goes
Hmm.
at like half a mile an hour, and I just held on for dear life and just
Mm.
started walking. And then I would, click a little beep now and then and it'd go a little bit faster until I was jogging again. And within a year of uh, of the meningitis, I was running my first marathon again back in my hometown
Wow.
of Akron, Ohio. And I got a PR for my first sub 4 hour marathon
Jeez.
and qualified for Boston.
Wow.
And that th- it happened, the meningitis happened in August of 2015. But I got out of the hospital after a couple months, and I was in the I was in my home trying to figure out what to do, going to the treadmill and trying to work out. But I really needed something to do, and the holidays were coming up, so I decided we were going to just throw a big feast. Like all of the family from all over the country, and we were going to have neighbors, even some of those students from the EOD school sometimes get stranded during the holidays when
Hmm.
the base shuts down, but they don't have maybe enough leave days or money to fly back home, and they're saving up for Christmas or something. So Thanksgiving, uh, they just kind of spend it on a closed down base. So we bring some of those students over to our house and share at our table. So we had this like huge Thanksgiving party coming up, and I just started preparing weeks in advance. Since I love to cook, it became both therapy and a way to shift that focus from what was going on with me to how I could still serve others.
Mm.
And I just poured myself into it, and I started cooking. I mean, I was making all the turkey and all the trimmings, everything. But I started making desserts like weeks in advance, and I was making like cakes and pies and cookies, and I was making like batch of fudge after another. I
Just
was throwing
feeling the ingredients.
yeah,
Yeah.
just changing the ingredients, throw some nuts in here, little spices over there. I'll go to the
Yeah.
liquor cabinet. I'm like,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's kind of funny. My wife, Michaela, noticed two things that were happening. One was she saw something on me that she hadn't seen in almost 6 months at this point, was a smile on my face.
Mm.
I was actually enjoying myself. And two, the fudge was piling up. So so she started sneaking it out and giving it away. Sneaking, like, you got to be real stealthy around a blind deaf guy.
Yeah.
Anyways, uh people start coming back. They wanted to buy some for a party or a baby shower or birthday or something like that, and they asked if they could buy some from us, and I said, well, of course you may. Capitalist in me saying there's something here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we had a business, and we named it Extraordinary Delights, or EOD Fudge.
Nice.
And that quickly became moderate success. We've been featured now on Rachel Ray, the Lester Holt show on Fox Business. And it was a real blessing for me in particular, just to get me out of that funk,
Hmm.
and and for the family, because it just took all that focus off of what was hard about life and turned it into something positive. And also, once we started selling some fudge, we needed to we needed something to do with the revenue. So we started looking into real estate. And this is
Nice.
this is great. Like, how does a blind guy, blind deaf guy, invest in real estate? And
Sight unseen, I
look back to
suppose.
what's that?
You buy sight unseen, I suppose. It takes on a new meaning.
Yes, yes. It's funny. So far, I've never even stepped in foot of one of our buildings, our properties, before getting under contract,
Wow.
or even after purchasing, or
Yeah.
before purchasing it. Yeah, I definitely do it all remotely. In fact, our very first purchase was probably the worst idea you could possibly imagine a blind deaf guy doing. Is an out of state online auction, sight unseen, buyer beware,
Yeah.
using hard money. And it turned out exactly like you think it might. You think it might. We
Baptism by
bought it.
fire.
Yeah. Mm. So we bought it. We got the winning bid, $64,800, and we budgeted about $50,000 to bring this thing back to life. And as soon as we got started, we realized that it was going to take a little bit more. Um, the the rehab just kept snowballing. This thing was built in 1920.
Mm.
Probably untreated lumber. The everything was leaking. There was so much wood rot. I think just like the old 1950s wallpaper was the only thing holding
Yeah.
the roof up. And
I've
it
been
just
there. Yeah.
months after months, it just kept piling up. And it scared the heck out of us. We actually, and we didn't use the hard money because we didn't realize that they needed it in LLC, and because we purchased it on the online auction, we did under my name, and they
Mm.
weren't going to. So there was all these things that just kept
Wow.
compounding the issues, and we just made it harder and harder. But it was the first time the first time we purchased real estate was also the first time we found a private lender, individual investor, who kind of swooped in and helped us out of the situation and got us to the finish line. We'd originally, and this is also like, how forgiving real estate can be. We'd originally estimated the ARV to be $165,000. So if you go by the 70% rule, $65,000 purchase, $50,000 rehab, 70%,
Yeah.
$115,000. Except when your budget doubles to, the whole entire project goes to exactly $165,000, you're now at 100% of your ARV.
And you were planning to flip it?
But thankfully, because our contractor was just a magician,
Yeah.
and we do a couple things really did work in our favor. The appraiser gave us a valuation of 195,
Mm.
and the long-term renters, it was this doctor lawyer couple, and we originally estimated to be like about 1250 in rent, and um, they just moved out just a month ago, having been there for the last 3 years, paying $1,500 a month.
Wow.
So so it definitely worked out in our favor.
Yeah.
Saved our hides because we stuck our necks out quite a bit there. But it was awesome. And wow, we didn't pull all of our capital out of it the first, with the cash out refinance.
Hmm.
We did pull out enough to pay back the private lender and do down payments and start projects on a few other properties. So we got a
Wow.
duplex. We did a on a burster on an Airbnb, and that thing is cash flowing like crazy in Akron, Ohio.
Nice.
Like
Can you
I think
explain?
whatever.
Can you
So
explain
go.
what that stands for? The burster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Brandon Turner coined the phrase
Yeah.
from Bigger Pockets, but it's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And it's just the methodology for adding, adding value to a property by forcing appreciation in the renovation. So you buy it, a deep discount, then you fix it up, you rent it out to somebody so it's generating revenue. Then you do a cash out refinance, and hopefully that 70% rule. So you like our, my example here, you buy it and you force that appreciation from 65,000 dollars up to $195,000.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't quite 70%, but um, it got us enough to cash out, get our most of our investment capital back, and you just are able to recycle the same money into the next project,
Yeah.
essentially.
Nice. And you're using that one as a short-term rental, even though it's in Akron, Ohio, which probably isn't the mecca of short-term rentals.
No, that was what was very surprising. Uh, I think one of your previous guests called it utility
Mm-hmm.
locations, right? And Akron is just like that. It's there are, of course, having grown up there, I have know all of the points of interest all around, and there are some great ones. However, it's not your beach or mountain destination. You're not going to hear somebody say, what, sweetheart, I know we were really hoping on Denmark, but I'd really like to go to Akron before I die. Can we go there this next vacation?
It's a bucket list. Yeah.
No offense to my fellow Akronites, but go Zips. But it's true. But we originally planned for this um, short-term rental that we now have, which was basically a burr into a short-term instead of a long-term. And it cash flows a lot better. But we'd originally planned to do a medium term rental. So not short term where it's nightly rates,
Mm-hmm.
and not long term where you sign a 1 year lease and you're unfurnished. So we were going to furnish it and then rent to traveling nurses, because there are three major hospitals right in Akron. So it and my sister was at one time a traveling nurse.
Mm.
So we kind of had an inside scoop on that. But what we found out with this 4-bed, 2-bathroom house, and we were going to rent it out by the room, is that we weren't finding a whole lot of nurses that like sharing bathrooms. So
Mm.
plan B was actually to list it on VRBO and Airbnb, and roll the dice, and it worked out really well. The plan C was to go long-term rental, and it would still cover the bills. So we had plenty of exit strategies, but yeah, going on to Airbnb should have been probably the plan A from the beginning, because it's just worked out really well.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So is that your strategy now? Are you buying in kind of utilitarian markets, or have you kind of shifted?
We actually have shifted a little bit. We're still looking in that area, but since I live here on the Emerald Coast in the Florida Panhandle, yeah, we are smack dab in that beach rental community.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, it was just the barrier for entry was pretty high. Beach rentals tend to be more expensive.
Mhm.
However, because we're generating equity and cash flow in our utility markets, we've come to that place where we can also, do the same model here. We've also learned quite a bit through, real estate university and those first few projects to be able to have the confidence to invest in these larger, more expensive, markets. And besides that, I've also partnered with a fellow wounded warrior friend of mine, Daniel Devine, who had deployed together with
Mm.
me on that first deployment to Afghanistan when I was still a Navy cook. Daniel is a Navy Master at Arms in Pensacola, just down the road from me, and he's just days, weeks away from his retirement also, and wasn't sure about his plans after military retirement. Maybe get a GS job or something else in the same field.
Mhm.
And of course, there are a few difficulties, like anything else in my life, that come with being blind and deaf, like spreadsheets, uh,
Yeah.
or just jumping in the car to go do a showing or something like that. So, or even looking at photographs on a listing online. I mean, there's lots of things that are difficult, if not impossible, for me. So, I
Yeah.
I invited Danny to partner with me on investing here, and we started a wholesaling and flipping slash burr company in the Florida Panhandle. So now that's been spinning up for the last few months, and we're into a few different projects right now. We've got two rehab. We have one rehab going on right now in Pensacola. We're under contract for another one. Right, yeah, as we speak, we just got it under contract last week. We're really excited about the prospects for this, and he's been taken to it really well. I'm really excited about our future.
Wow. That's incredible. So how do you guys divide the roles in your partnership?
Well, of course, they are ever evolving,
Yeah.
but part of it was here. You, Danny, I'll teach you everything I know, and I'll give
Mhm.
you the advice I've learned over the last few years in this, and I'll teach you all about real estate. And he was really green. Like, yeah, last year he was pre Rich Dad Poor Dad green.
Mhm.
Um,
The gateway drug.
and yeah, so there was a learning curve, and but I'm telling you, like Danny just he really took to it so quickly, and it was so exciting, and it's great to see that he's got this, this vision of the future. It's just incredible. So his roles are more of like the operations. He's the integrator to my visionary, if that doesn't seem like a funny
Mhm.
definition of my
Yeah.
job, but it's true. Uh, Mostly, on the financing and deal finding uh, aspect, or he's the um, maybe more of the deal analysis, whereas he's doing the marketing. He's doing uh, the seller visits, so his acquisitions and project management. And I mean, it, it's really it's like two pieces of one unit rather than two individual jobs, and um, I'm eternally grateful
Mhm.
for how these circumstances ended up, because he's doing a great job. We're growing and moving very quickly, and um, I, I just think this new chapter is fantastic.
Yeah. That's awesome. Those are some of the best partnerships where you figure out, each other's strengths and weaknesses and complement, as opposed to, I think a lot of people look for somebody just like them, so that they get along really well, but then you've got the same strengths, same weaknesses. So it's pretty amazing how you guys have set that up. Um, and in terms of financing the properties, then do you guys partner with other people on your deals? Do you syndicate, or how are you doing that?
It's often it's often deal specific.
Okay.
However, we use a combination, or we'll use hard money, private money, or combination. And we usually put a little bit of our own skin in each project, just to make sure that our stakeholders know that we're in it as much as they are.
Nice. Nice. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that background about the real estate. I kind of have some practical questions. I also am big on discussing mindset on this show, because I think that's so important. And obviously, you've had a unique experience around kind of transitioning your mindset. I want to go back to one of the first things that you said in the beginning, around that you don't have a monopoly on pain, and that you decided that you just needed to ask different questions. And I think it's one thing to say that, and then it's another thing to practically do it. So I guess my first question would be around, like, for people listening to this who are in a place where they've experienced massive trauma and are wondering how they're going to get beyond that and come out the other side, what advice would you offer to them?
We all go through difficulties, challenges, obstacles, hardships in our life. It may be physical, emotional traumas, it may be loss, and may just a lot often it's like financial issues.
Mhm.
So I don't know what's going on in anybody else's life, and I can't. That's why I say, like, I can't claim that my experiences are any better, harder, or worse than yours or anybody else's. But what I've learned to do is, when something is extremely uncomfortable, something is painful, and one thing I do know is that it won't last forever.
Mm.
And I first try to figure out why this is happening for me. And if I can learn the lesson in this hardship, whether it's learning how to to perform a new skill in a different way. I mean, there were so many times I've had to learn something so innocuous, so easy to do with your eyes. Imagine trying to pair your socks without being able to see. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems silly to anybody, including me. But I had to figure out,
Mhm.
um, a completely new way to do that, and there are much larger things. But beyond learning a new skill and becoming stronger for it, the next step is what is there in this lesson that I can teach others? How can I use this to serve others? And
Mm.
that turns an obstacle, that turns a challenge into a value you can put into your community, whether that's a local community, your internet community, your family, whatever the community is. And we every day are learning better ways to, and Daniel and I are, learning how to turn these unloved homes into gorgeous, newly restored, places that people would be glad to live in, rent or buy. And it fixes up the community. Often we're solving a problem of a seller who may be in some sort of distress. We're finding other investors that are just looking for ways to make money with their money without having to, actively participate in real
Mhm.
estate. It is a way to add value, not just to the structure of this property, but everybody involved, including the neighborhood, who we turn the property from an eyesore into another gorgeous home.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's um, it's yeah, it's just a very inspiring hearing you talk about this, knowing what you've been through, and trying to envision, like you talked about, just those little things that that you've had to relearn and get beyond, and then still accomplish all that you've accomplished. Just in terms of practicality, I think probably people have questions around, like, how am I even talking to you right now? Or like when you ran a marathon, how did you run a marathon being blind and deaf? Like, tactically, like, how does that work? So can you talk through like some of the technology? You kind of joked around about how, since Helen Keller, things have changed a lot since then. You're saying that before we got on the this call. So can you kind of
Oh,
explain some of the technology?
well, of course, like I've explained, like these are prosthetic eyes. I cannot see anything, no light, nothing. I'm totally blind. My ears are completely shut off. So without this one cochlear implant right here, which is not a hearing aid, it doesn't
Okay.
take audio and amplify it into my ear canal, which wouldn't do anything. It
Mm.
actually takes, like a hearing aid, it has microphones, but it processes it into a digital signal, which goes to this coil, which is a magnet. So right now I'm totally radio silent because there's an implant
Wow.
that's connected to my auditory nerve, and it sends that digital signal to the auditory nerve, um, and I can hear, which sounds much like um, trying to understand what's going on inside the kitchen at McDonald's through the drive-through speaker. But uh, in truth, if you imagine it, you call your friend and they're at a restaurant or something at a table and they put the phone on speaker, put it in the middle of the
Yeah.
table. I I hear all of that, all like a wall of sound. But
Wow.
I mean, it's nothing like the real thing, but it's way better than the alternative.
Mhm.
And this thing is also Bluetooth connected to my phone, which has text to speech. Same with my adaptive computer. That way, I can connect to you, through Bluetooth and the internet and the miracles of technology and medical science. And it's just 101 ways I can screw something up. A bunch of different cables and batteries, but it, like I said, way better than the alternative. When I go
Amazing.
running, that's far more simple. Uh, I have a running partner. We run shoulder to shoulder, side by side,
Mm.
and I've got this like a short tether. It's just a nylon strap, like you would take off a backpack, and it's got a loop on either end, enough to fit a couple fingers in there, and we just run. And I get I get one loop, and my running partner gets the other loop,
Mm.
and we just run side by side, and I just get all my cues from where that tether goes. And we of course like communicate, and it is very important for my running partner to let me know when there's a curb or a sidewalk or a speed bump or open manhole cover. But um I've run marathons and ultra marathons side by side with another partner.
Wow.
And it has, one thing is, being blind and deaf, it's not like I can lace up and just step out the front door. uh that's dangerous.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
uh it's turned everything in my life, practically everything in my life, into a team sport, which is awesome.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's that's amazing. And I'm also curious about, I just read um your Facebook post about about your son losing a tooth recently, and how you feel like he's kind of milking the system at this point, and how difficult it is for a blind and deaf tooth fairy to navigate through a dark room, or navigate through his room with all his toys and stuff. So I'm curious about being how being blind and deaf has impacted, raising a family, and just like the family aspect of having three young kids at home.
Oh my goodness. Well, of course, that is a challenge. Being a parent, of course, is a challenge. But you know, being a blind deaf parent is definitely an adventure.
Yeah.
For example, excuse me, uh, my my oldest, when he was just a toddler and he was just learning, just getting to understand that dad couldn't see him, I would say,
Mhm.
Cameron, he maybe did something wrong, maybe he's running
Yeah.
away, and I would say, Cameron, come here, and he would hide by sucking in his breath and pressing himself against the wall.
The smart
And
kid.
so I would get as close as I could and stick that my ear in the right direction, and I'll just wait, because a few seconds later I would hear like, there you are, and then I would hear him run away. No, but it's now I have identical twin toddlers that have followed behind him. Yeah, they're 3 years old and identical, because, well, I shouldn't be the only confused one. And it's just, you find ways and you connect in different ways. And now the boys are coming up, but they're showing me things that I can touch with my hands, and they get involved and are like, look what I made, and check this out. And I love being a stay-at-home dad. I make all the meals. Um, I actually do most of the diaper changing, and that, you think diffusing bombs is
Yeah.
scary. Try changing diapers without looking.
Yeah.
Um, but
Still have your sense of smell though, so you get the best part of the diaper change, which is nice.
oh yeah, yeah. What have I been feeding you, kid?
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, I have 3 kids too as of 3 weeks ago. And yeah, it's challenging enough when I can, see them and hear them. So it's I can imagine some of the difficulties. But I just am blown away at the way you take it in stride, the humor that you have about it. And I don't want to take advantage of your time here and keep you too long, but one of the last questions I had is, what do you think are some of the main things that you've taken away from your experiences in the uniform to create a successful life and business, outside of the service?
You know, I loved how General Mattis said it in his book, um, Cause on Chaos. He said,
Mhm.
in the Marines, mm, things being hard were never a good excuse for mission failure.
Mm,
So, and that's how I look at, quote unquote, look at uh, all of my experiences, no matter how difficult or how impossible they may seem. Uh, I relate it to my time as an EOD tech. We given as this big shipping container, just a three man team, 3-person team. We get like the quad con, like a shipping container full of bomb suits and robots and all these other tools to do the job, from nuclear weapons down to the smallest bullets, anything that goes boom. But then we go deploy with this container of tools, and then we get our armored truck to get on patrols and missions and get out there in the field. And the truck is far smaller than the shipping container, so you got to leave some tools behind, right? You do a little triage on what you're most likely going to need in the area you're working in, and you do the best you can with the tools you got. And then when we got to Afghanistan, most of those the places we were patrolling were dirt roads. They were like goat trails. You couldn't take a vehicle anywhere, so we were carrying what we
yeah.
needed on our backs. So it was usually just a couple blocks of C4, a rope and carabiner, a knife, and some water. I mean, it was we had to use our creativity and our imagination, the skills and education, and that we've learned and built up over time, and that of the team around us. So I had to utilize not just my own abilities, but others to do the same job. And in mission failure, like saying, "Oh, I don't have that tool," was never acceptable, because
Mhm.
we were all there in it together. So I take that same attitude in everything I do every single day. whether it's real estate or my family or cooking fudge or whatever it is, whatever the difficulty, I find the answer because I'm not going to fail today. And if I fall down, if one solution doesn't work, I'll find another one. If anything is, if there was a motto to a theme to my entire life, is that I've been failing forward or failing up my whole life. And you know what? It's working. I, I would prefer not to fall down or get scratched up as much, but you know what? It's an experience, and I'm going to continue to fail forward if I can, as long as I can.
Man, truly inspiring. I just really appreciate you spending the time here today. Such great advice, such great perspective for people. I think that's the big thing. Because we all, like you said, everyone is going through something. But to hear someone who's gone through, some bigger scrapes, like you said, than most, and still come out the other side with such a great attitude and such great perspective, I think it's going to help others who might be working through their own thing right now. So really, really appreciate you spending the time here today.
Well, thanks again for the invite, Kirby. This is a great talk.
Awesome having you. Thanks. Bye.